It feels like the urge to seek out entertainment almost all of the time has quietly infiltrated our minds, to the extent that they've begun to feel just a little bit less like our minds. And certainly, there are more things to be entertained by than ever before, with media and technology being produced at breakneck speeds in an attempt to keep pace with our rapidly deteriorating attention spans. But why are those attention spans on the decline? And how did it get to a point where some of us can only sit through a TikTok if half of the screen is taken up by subway surfers? The sad truth is this, because it benefits those above us to keep us entertained. But we'll get into that reasoning and a whole lot more a little later. For now, the question is this. If, as a society, we're on a sinking ship in regards to our relationship with entertainment, how do we get off before it's too late? And to answer that, we need to discuss how it is we got here in the first place. What does entertainment mean to you? That is a question with a million different answers because we all find different things entertaining. At its core though, entertainment is anything that amuses us or provides us with some form of enjoyment. And as human beings, we've been finding ways to entertain ourselves since we've been able to communicate. And well, probably even before that. As soon as our most basic physiological needs are met, we turn to finding things to do. Even Stone Age tribes with their extremely limited vocabularies would tell stories around campfires and dance to music they made from the sounds of trees and animal bones. It's agreed that they would even host competitions of the physical nature, even though they risked serious injury or death, all in the name of entertainment. And that's not to mention the earliest forms of art, such as cave paintings, likely done to commemorate and document experiences the group had undergone. So it's more than just TikTok, Twitch streams and Twitter. And it's clear we've been entertaining ourselves for a long time to say the least, but should we be? Is entertainment a vital part of the human experience, or is it all just a waste of time? To help determine this, one could turn to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The hierarchy of needs is a theory proposed by Abraham Maslow in 1943, which intends to reflect the needs of each and every individual in society. And as you can see, it's often presented as a pyramid, with the most vital needs making up the base layers, and only once those are met can the individual draw their attention further up the pyramid. Under none of these categories though does entertainment seem to fit in nicely. And yet, I think regardless of this, we'd be hard-pressed to find anyone that didn't think entertainment was a necessary part of the human experience. Despite what some corners of social media like to project, we are not only here to be productivity machines. We are not machines at all. We are in fact mammals, hyper-intelligent and acutely emotional mammals at that are prone to large amounts of stress. And I would argue that we all deserve the right to de-stress. Whether for you that's reading a book or playing a video game. And even when we aren't necessarily stressed, our brains still require constant stimulation. Even Nelson Mandela, when he was in prison, had to entertain himself by counting the insects on his floor and the cracks in the walls of his cell. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is an extremely thought out and well respected piece of work and is often still used and referred to in the field of psychology. However, I think it's pretty clear that the need to enjoy life, at least some of the time, is present in us all. Sometimes we just need to read, watch, sing, dance, and laugh. So, if entertainment isn't only desirable but fully necessary, it begs the question: our attention spans are getting dramatically shorter. That's a statement that almost everyone, I think, will agree with. But the idea that attention spans are growing shorter isn't just a commonly agreed upon narrative, it's statistically true. In a 2004 study conducted in the UK, the average attention span in adults was around 2.5 minutes on average. That same study was replicated in 2016 and the number had dropped drastically to around 45 seconds. So, why is this happening? Well, the answer is likely linked to a plethora of factors, but there's one culprit that stands taller than the rest. Yes, we're all addicted to our smartphones, and I really do mean we. I really wish I could sit here and tell you that I've transcended this problem and then provide you with the solution, but I can't. Between TikTok, Instagram, YouTube and Spotify, it seems to me that the idea of sitting in silence has been transformed from a peaceful experience to a tortuous one. We're all living in a state of constant stimulation and most of us have no intention of leaving. But why is that a bad thing? Well, it's an old adage, but you really can have too much of a good thing. The way I see it, there are two main problems with how entertainment is shaping the cultural landscape. The first concerns the individual and the other, society. In relation to the individual, it seems the days are long past in which a person could come home from a hard day's work and crack open a beer and sit on the porch to entertain themselves. It's becoming increasingly rare that we can sit around a table at a restaurant and just chat without reaching for our phone every time there's a pause in the conversation. Silence, it seems, is the enemy. The problem the individual faces with constant stimulation is that each time we succumb to that urge, we shift the goalposts further and further afield. Our baseline for what we need to be entertained is raised higher and higher every time, and that leads to a very serious problem. It's much harder to enjoy walking your dog in silence when you can walk your dog whilst listening to a podcast, and you can take that example and project it onto pretty much anything. It feels like we can no longer only do one thing. Whilst we're doing something, we've always got to be doing something else. From my personal experience, the biggest problem that stems from this is that we become incapable of enjoying the things we once used to. The world becomes less interesting because it's not tailor-made for you through the intricacies of an algorithm. That waterfall you saw on a hike with your family just doesn't do it for you anymore because you can't run through it and discover a hidden treasure chest. And then there's the societal problem. Certainly, there are probably more problems than we can even begin to identify right now, but the one that strikes me the most is this. If we continue on the path we're on, the path of least resistance, what are we going to leave behind? Would we have the Sistine Chapel if Michelangelo had TikTok? Would we have the pyramids if the Egyptians had Netflix? And would we have the Beatles if they had Tinder? I don't know, and I don't think I want to know. It's hard to imagine how many great artists won't ever pick up a paintbrush because it's easier to scroll. And it's almost scary to imagine how many life-saving doctors won't ever pick up a scalpel because the thought of studying just wasn't hyper-stimulating enough. It's certainly a scary side effect of the entertainment epidemic. But surely, if this is the case, those among us who are leaders will step in and save the day. You've probably heard about the so-called war for your attention. Companies all over the world are going to insane lengths to compete for our attention and, by extension, our wallets. The unfortunate side effect of the war for our attention is that it does an excellent job at distracting us from the wars going on in the world right now. It's certainly a lot harder to notice the world is on fire when you're binge watching your favourite season from your couch. The sad reality is that it benefits those above us on the status ladder to have us walking around as mindless entertainment junkies. But what if I told you that even our politicians, our world leaders, actually like us this way? And that sounds like a cynical take, but it's actually a tale as old as time. A Roman poet from the 2nd century said, "Give them bread and circuses, and they will never revolt." It implies that in order for politicians to generate public approval, they don't necessarily need to be good at their jobs or excel in public service, but only appeal to our most immediate and primal urges. We're all busy consuming content, so we're kept content. It feels like they have weaponized entertainment against us. Then there's the tech and media corporations. The more we're plugged in, the higher our screen time, the more money they stand to make. And they're all in direct competition to make the hottest new product, regardless of the consequences said product will have on society. Once upon a time, the newspaper was more than enough. Then they invented television. After that, we got the internet, but we couldn't access our computers 24/7, so then they gave us the internet, but it fit in our pocket this time. And fast forward now, there are people walking around New York City, one of the busiest and most exhilarating cities on Earth, wearing VR goggles. See, the problem is, the more we are entertained, the harder it is to keep us entertained. Gaming on your PlayStation used to be enough, but now you can game in your self-driving car while it writes your college essay for you. And I can't be the only one wondering, when will it be enough? Perhaps it never will. Let me be clear. The point in this video is not to start a fear-mongering campaign against entertainment. It's vital that we find things to entertain us, things to do with our time, and things that help us unwind. Entertainment has always been here, and it always will be. But as I write this part of the script, it's painfully ironic that I've just caught myself scrolling through Instagram Reels, and I don't even remember why or when I picked up my phone in the first place. It might be that you're perfectly happy with your relationship to entertainment. Or maybe you're like me and you're painfully aware of how much you're overindulging. And for sure, it can be disheartening to hear that those stationed above us, politically and economically, are pushing for us to consume more and more every day. But change starts at home. Maybe we can't change the way the world is going to pan out. Maybe there's nothing we can do about the chronic consumption the future has in store for us, but we can make our own decisions. Even though it's difficult, and even though we can fail, hope is never lost. There's nothing more noble than falling down and getting right back up. Sure, the powers that be can make it harder and harder to resist, but at the end of the day, they can lead a horse to TikTok, but they can't make it doom scroll.